1, 2, 3. Testing, okay. Okay, today there is a program in Chinese language going on in the Guanyin Hall, so we have to have the class here today. Okay, let us start first with homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, we've been studying Sutta number 77 in the Majjhima Nikaya. This is the Mahasahaludayi Sutta, the longer discourse to Sakuludayin. And sort of the theme of this sutta is the reason why the Buddha's disciples respect and revere him. And in the portion that we took last week, we saw the Buddha asks the wanderer Sakuludayi why he thinks the Buddha's disciples respect him, and Sakuludayi mentions, I think it was 5 types of sort of moderate ascetic practice that he thought the Buddha excelled in. And then the Buddha said that if that were the case, then his disciples should respect and revere not himself, but certain of his other disciples who actually excelled him in these observances, like eating little, taking food only gathered on alms round, wearing rag robes, and so on. And then the Buddha begins by explaining the real reasons why his disciples respect and revere him. And so that portion starts on 635. And we covered the first 4 of these. That is, because the Buddha observes the higher virtue, virtuous conduct, because the Buddha has what is called here excellent knowledge and vision. Then the Buddha has the higher wisdom. And then the Buddha teaches the 4 Noble Truths. Okay, now we come to the 5th section of the sutta, in which the Buddha explains, well, this is the 5th reason why his disciples respect him. And all of these different groups that are going to be mentioned here come together under the general heading. And these headings were given probably, I think, by Venerable Nyanamoli, or maybe I added them. And these are called the way to develop wholesome states or wholesome qualities. And so the rest of the sutta that comes under this heading constitutes, we could kind of call it a compendium of all the different practices taught by the Buddha, or most of the practices along the path to liberation. And the first 7 sections here fit into a familiar framework which in the later tradition comes to be called the 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhammas. We come across the expression Bodhipakkhya Dhammas in the suttas themselves, but I think not with specific reference to these 37 states. The term Bodhipakkhya Dhammas Okay, Dhamma here would be, you say, qualities or factors. Pakya is based upon the word which means side or wing. So it's factors that are on the side or the wing of Bodhi, which means enlightenment. Sometimes they're translated as wings to enlightenment or wings to awakening. It sounds good, but it's not quite accurate, because Pakya doesn't mean the wings themselves, but it means things on the side of or on the wing of. So it's a little bit like in politics, they have what they call the left wing and the right wing. So you don't call them wings to government or wings to governance, but it's the right wing or the left wing. And so we have, like, I think there's another expression, a kusala pakya dhamma. Which would mean factors on the side of the unwholesome. It doesn't mean the wings to the unwholesome. Okay, and so we have, under the general heading of these 37 factors that lead to enlightenment, or I call them the 37 aids to enlightenment, these factors fall into 7 groups. We see them here, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right kinds of striving, or the 4 right efforts, the 4 bases for spiritual power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 enlightenment factors, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And sometimes the issue is raised, or the question is raised, do these 7 groups form a sequence, kind of meaningful sequence whereby one leads to another? And I think in certain schools of interpretation, they're taken in that way, as though one progresses from the 4 foundations of mindfulness to the 4 right efforts, then to the 4 bases for spiritual power, and so on. I remember years ago reading, it was a treatise by like a Tibetan scholar who explained that a bodhisattva, an aspirant for enlightenment, like for 1 aeon, he has to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Then the next aeon, in the aeon is the time it takes for a world system to evolve and disintegrate. Something like, in modern astrophysical terms, maybe 35 billion years. So for 35 billion years, you practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Then the next 35 billion years, you practice the 4 right efforts. Then you go on to the 4 bases for spiritual power. And finally, after so many aeons, you come to the Noble Eightfold Path. But in the mainstream Buddhism, at least within the Theravada tradition, they're not understood to form a sequence of development. In fact, even if you look at the 7 groups themselves, you could see something which will reveal why they are arranged in this particular sequence. And what is that reason? Take a look at the groups and it should be clear to you. Or it might be clear to you. Any ideas? Tracy? Exactly, yeah. It's a kind of numerical progression. And this is the way, the Buddha often taught in this way. And the compilers of the texts often arranged text in this way. So, the Anguttara Nikaya, hint, is arranged according to the Book of Ones, then the 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and so on, up to the 11s. Then a work called the Therigatha, which collects the poems or verses of the ancient monks and nuns, arranges them first poems that have only one verse, then the next chapter poems that have two verses, and so on, up to poems that have, I think, 50 or 60 verses. So the governing pattern here is simply a numerical sequence, and as we'll see, there's a lot of intersections, interconnections, interweaving between these 37 factors. Okay, and so the first set that we have is the 4 foundations of mindfulness, or also called the 4 establishings of mindfulness. Okay, so here the Buddha says, he's continuing, he says, here, or again, Udayi, I have proclaimed to my disciples the way to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then these are expounded in terms of a standard formula that comes down again and again in the text. Here, a bhikkhu or a monk abides, contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating feelings as feelings. He abides contemplating mind as mind. He abides contemplating, I don't quite agree with this translation now. I would say he abides contemplating phenomena as phenomena, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And thereby many disciples of mine abide, having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. So we could see here that simply if one takes the 4 establishments of 4 foundations of mindfulness as one's vehicle of practice, then that by itself can be considered a sufficient way to the achievement of ultimate realization. But of course, within the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we have all the other factors of the 37 aids to enlightenment are implied, and they can all evolve out of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Okay, the 4 foundations of mindfulness are analyzed and explained in detail in the Majjhima Nikaya in Sutta number 10. That is the famous Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. So I'm not going to explain it in detail here, but just to see what is involved in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. First, the 4 foundations of mindfulness are distinguished by way of the 4 objects. So we have the 4 objects of mindfulness to be the body, feelings, then mind in the sense of the general state of mind. And then we have a very broad category, which in Pali it's simply called dhammas. The word dhamma is a word with almost an untranslatable meaning and with several nuances. Here it means, the way I understand it, to mean things in general, but organized in a particular way, which I'll come to. Okay, do we see any particular meaning or significance in the sequence in which these 4 foundations are laid out? Do you see any meaning in this sequence? Oh, please, yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Very, very well expressed. Yeah, it's from the grossest and the easiest to discern, which is the body, then passing successively to subtler levels. And how did you put it again? You put it... Yeah, but there was a phrase you used that I thought was good. Okay, anyway, from the easiest to discern to the more difficult to discern. Okay, so one starts with awareness of the body, and this would comprise, it could be an exercise like mindfulness of breathing, or the elements of the body, the 4 elements, or the constituent parts of the body, the 32, 31 parts. The awareness of the postures. This is where the walking meditation comes in. So when walking, one is aware of walking. When standing, aware of standing. When sitting, when lying down, one is aware of each posture. And then it also includes the famous or infamous charnel ground meditations, meditating on the successive stages and the decomposition of a dead body. Okay, so as one is contemplating the body, then as the mind becomes more agile, more perceptive, more refined, then one can pick up more easily on the different feelings that arise in the course of practice. So one can discern the pleasant, painful, neutral feelings. Then often, as one's awareness of the feelings becomes more precise, sharper, then one can see how particular states of mind arise in response to these feelings. So in response to pleasant feelings, there will arise states of mind which are governed by or driven by greed or attachment to the pleasant feelings. And then as one experiences painful feelings, there will arise states of mind governed by aversion towards the painful feelings. And then often towards the neutral feelings, there will occur just a kind of dullness and sometimes a dullness, a lack of clear awareness. So this would be the state of mind which is cloaked by delusion. And then as one trains in observing these states of mind, one is able to dispel the defilements that are governing them. And so then one will see how the mind is freed from, at least temporarily, from attachment, from aversion, from delusion. And then as the practice progresses, then one can observe or note the subtler states of mind that arise through the progression, through the series. Okay, the 4th foundation of mindfulness is in Pali, is called dhammas. And so the word dhamma is used in the plural to refer most broadly to all phenomena in general. But if we look at the contemplation of dhammas, we see, as it's explained in the Satipatthana Sutta, we see that these phenomena are actually organized into particular subordinate groups. And so these groups are the 5 hindrances, the 5 aggregates, the 6 internal and external sense bases, and then the defilements that arise based on those, or the fetters that arise based on those sensory experiences. Then the 7 factors of enlightenment, and then the 4 noble truths, culminating in the direct experience of the 4 noble truths. So the way I understand the 4th foundation of mindfulness here, what it means are phenomena organized according to we call them the dominant categories of the Dhamma. The Dhamma as the Buddha's teaching. So we have the 5 hindrances, because those are the primary obstacles to mental development. Then we have 2 groups of phenomena that are to be contemplated in order to understand the nature of things. That is the 5 aggregates and the 6 sense bases. Those give us 2 alternative ways to get insight into our direct experience, then as one is exploring either the 5 aggregates or the 6 sense bases, then the mind starts to progress in the sequence of insight knowledges. And so now one enters into the 7 factors of enlightenment. So now these factors are moving in a very direct way towards the culminating experience, the breakthrough experience of realization. And when that breakthrough experience of realization takes place, it brings the direct cognition of the 4 Noble Truths, which is the core, you could say that's the core Dhamma at the heart of the Buddha Dhamma. And then the realization of the 4 Noble Truths culminates in the direct perception of Nibbana, the ultimate unconditioned Dhamma. Okay, so this is the way the contemplation of, the way I interpret the contemplation of Dhammas. So it's the contemplation of phenomena organized in terms of the primary categories of the Dhamma as the Buddha's teaching, culminating in a realization of the core principle or teaching at the heart of the Dhamma, that is the 4 Noble Truths. And then let's see what's involved in this process of being mindful. You know, nowadays it's become very popular to speak about mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. So we have mindful cooking, mindfully washing the dishes, mindfully bringing up babies, mindful education, mindfulness in stress reduction, mindfulness in psychotherapy, mindfulness in mindful politics. So it seems like mindfulness has been a bit singled out for special, Academy Awards. You know, the Oscar goes to mindfulness. And best mental factor of the year, mindfulness, come up, everybody is cheering, yay, yay, yay. But look at the way the text explains what is meant by the 4 foundations of mindfulness. One dwells, contemplating the body as a body. We have the word here, contemplating, it's anupassana, which means, anupassana means closely seeing. Literally, it's closely seeing or closely observing, repeatedly observing. Okay, so he abides. That's anupassi here is translated contemplating, but literally it's closely observing or repeatedly observing. Then we have the word ardent. You know, the word ardent, of course, it's used in matters of love. Oh, he was so ardent. But here, the word ardent, oh, wow, this is the wrong kind of... Yeah, but it doesn't do me any good now, unless we can erase what's there. Okay, it doesn't matter. We just have to do it orally. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, the word ardent in Pali, it's atapi, which is closely connected with energy. In fact, the commentaries explain that what is meant by atapi is the factor of energy. So we have energy present, effort. So one is practicing mindfulness diligently, with effort, with energy. Then the word translated as fully aware. I don't quite like this now. I mean, this was Venerable Nyanamoli's choice, because the word aware has been used to render so many Pali words that it loses any kind of very precise meaning. But rather, I prefer to render it as clearly comprehending. And clearly comprehending sort of suggests that there's a factor of wisdom involved here. It's not yet the higher wisdom of direct insight, but already there's a capacity for discerning, distinguishing, understanding, comprehending. Okay, and mindful, so one is clearly comprehending and mindful. So you see, when mindfulness gets that Academy Award, he comes out on the stage and says, "Thank you so much, I deeply appreciate it, but I couldn't have done it without my director, close observance. Please come out and take a hand." So close observance comes up to the stage. That was my director, and the producer is right effort, that we're calling ardor or being ardent. Come up, I want to share this award with right effort. And then, of course, the one who made it all possible, the producer. Did I say the producer is right effort? Okay, mindfulness is the well, I wouldn't say that clear comprehension is just okay. We'll say that my supporting actor, or actress, a clear comprehension. Okay, and then we have putting away what's called covetousness and grief for the world. So this shows the direction that mindfulness should be taking within the four foundations of mindfulness. Here, covetousness, it's a rather awkward word, but the Pali word abhijja, it suggests clinging or craving. And then grief here, domanassa, is more like dejection. It doesn't have to be, or sadness. Grief usually suggests an extreme sadness, to the point that one is overwhelmed. But rather we could say covetousness represents the clinging or craving for things in the world, and dejection are feelings of despondency, any kind of sadness, discouragement in regard to worldly matters. Okay, so all of these factors come together working as a team. Oh, and then putting away covetousness and grief seems to point to the development, though it's not stated explicitly, but the development of concentration or samadhi. So we have these factors all working together here. Mindfulness with energy, with clear comprehension, which is the seed of wisdom. And we have incipient, or the initial stage of samadhi, of concentration, in this removing attachment and dejection. So these are all working together in the contemplation or close observation of these four bases of mindfulness. Okay, does anybody have any question on this part so far? Wait, take the microphone.
Was there a Pali word for clearly comprehending? I think it sounded to me like you were going to tell us that it's a factor of wisdom.
Yeah.
Not the,
the Pali word is sampajano. Sampajano describes the person who's clearly comprehending. Yeah, this is important, so I'll put it up.
And is that jhana word like jhana, the concentration?
No, this is a very different word. Yeah, that is, it's jhana has the JH, which is a completely different letter. But the word sampajano, this is one who's clearly comprehending, and then clear comprehension, the abstract noun is sampajanya. This is based on the verb the janati, which means to know. And so it has two prefixes, sam, which often gives a sense of fullness, and pa, sometimes gives a sense maybe of activity. And so we have another word very similar to this. It's based on the same verb. This is the word panya, which is what we translate often as wisdom. Oops. Or insight. And the verb here, maybe it shows up more clearly in the verb pajanati. The verb is the same janati, which goes into sampajano, and it has the prefix pa, as in panya, which we see the prefix here. So you can see that there's a verbal connection between sampajanya and panya. But sampajanya usually indicates, say, clear comprehension in whatever activity one is engaged in, knowing what one is doing, and knowing what is occurring within one, what kind of experience one is undergoing. So that when one is feeling any kind of, experiencing any kind of feeling, one is clearly comprehending what that feeling is. When any state of mind has arisen, one clearly comprehends what state of mind has arisen. Whereas panya, as wisdom, usually signifies more precisely having insight into the sometimes into the specific characteristics, say, of the five aggregates, and then the general characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. But sampajanya is what gives birth to panya, to wisdom. Okay, any further questions here? Just on this portion. Okay, then we'll go on to the second group. Okay, so here we have 4. There are 4 factors here, the first 4 of the 37. Now we come to the next, which is also a group of 4. These are called the 4 Samapadana. I'm just wondering if there could be rubbing alcohol, if there's a first aid kit here with rubbing alcohol, that might take. Yeah, that one comes off, I think.
Yeah, but if you rub this on top of the permanent marker.
Oh.
I think so. Yeah. So that's how you take it off. No, use this. Use this. This takes it off.
But that's a rather difficult process, you know.
Yeah, but this is.
That's just a.
No, that's not.
Okay.
But this is how you
Okay, wait, Johnny, don't use that. Johnny, let Kaidi spray. I think she has the stuff to take.
This takes it off. If you just take this off and
Yeah, but then you have to rub everything.
I know.
No, that seems not so practical.
That doesn't work as well.
One day,
Yeah.
the manufacturer has told the manufacturer's told us that the way that the lady just said was the right way. That's the only way.
That's the only way.
Well, that's what they recommend.
Well, I'm not going to rub out every letter like that now.
If you have paper, then you could just use the regular marker on paper.
Oh. But I don't think we have paper like that. Okay, so I don't have the ability to write. So this, what I'll do is to type them all out and send in an email blast. Okay, this is the 4 right kinds of striving. The word striving is samapadana, which is equivalent pretty much to samavayama, which is right effort. So we have here 4 kinds of right effort, which are, okay, they're explained here. Again, this is a fixed formula. Here, a monk awakens zeal. I don't like that word. It's more desire. The word is chanda. He awakens desire for the non-arising of unarisen. I don't like evil. I think bad is better. Bad, unwholesome states. And he makes effort, arouses energy, exerts his mind, and strives. He awakens zeal for the abandoning of arisen evil, unwholesome states. He awakens zeal for the arising of unarisen, wholesome states. He awakens zeal for the continuance, non-disappearance, strengthening, increase, and fulfillment by development of arisen wholesome states. And he makes effort, arouses energy, exerts his mind, and strives. So these are actually all terms, just alternative terms for expressing the idea of effort or energy. But this energy or effort is applied in the task of training the mind. And you could see how systematically the Buddha lays things out. First, he divides the qualities of the mind into the 2 broad categories of the unwholesome and the wholesome. Then each of these he divides into those that have not arisen and those that have already arisen. So in regard to, first try just, okay, with regard to the unwholesome states, first the energy is used to prevent the arising of states that have not yet arisen. And some texts explain that this is done specifically through what's called restraint of the senses. Since if one exercises restraint over the senses, then states of attachment and aversion towards, respectively, the agreeable and disagreeable objects of experience won't arise. Okay, then, with regard to those unwholesome states of mind that have already arisen, one applies energy to remove them, to eliminate them. So this is the energy that's used to dispel and remove unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome emotions, particularly the states of, could be the 5 hindrances, or greed, hatred, and delusion. Okay, then one applies the energy with regard to the wholesome states. Again, we have those that have not yet arisen, and so one has to apply the energy to bring them into being, to arouse them. And this is explained elsewhere as arousing or bringing into being the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right efforts, the 4 bases of spiritual power, and so on. So it's the effort to develop all 37 aids to enlightenment. And then once those wholesome qualities have arisen, then one applies effort to maintain them and to make them grow stronger, to reach fulfillment. Okay, so this is the 4 right kinds of striving, which are the 4 right efforts. Now we come to, this is a group which I've always found a little bit puzzling. It's called the 4 bases for spiritual power. In Pali, these are called the Iddhipada. And now the word Iddhi, which is what's translated spiritual power, is used elsewhere in the text to refer to the special supernormal powers that a meditator can develop, through deep samadhi or concentration. We'll actually come across them, I think, later in this sutta itself. If you just jump ahead to page 643, paragraph 31, we have here, I have proclaimed to my disciples the way to wield the various kinds of supernormal power. That is, having been one, they become many. Having been many, they become one. They appear, and then they vanish, vanishing into thin air. They can pass through walls without being obstructed. They can dive in and out of the earth as though it were water. They can walk on water without sinking, and so on. So it would seem to me a little bit peculiar that the Buddha includes methods for developing these kinds of spiritual power in the midst of a group of factors which otherwise are directed towards the attainment of, simply attainment of enlightenment. And so I'm not, I don't have a very clear idea of why this group is included here. But we could see that within this group we have emphasis on 4 factors which occur elsewhere in the path as factors that will lead to concentration, insight, and awakening. So we have here, first, a monk develops the basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to zeal, or better, I would say, due to desire and determined striving. He develops the basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to energy and determined striving. He develops the basis for spiritual power in concentration due to, the text just says, mind and determined striving. And he develops the basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to investigation and determined striving. And thereby many disciples of mine abide, having reached the consummation and perfection of direct knowledge. Okay, so we see that there are these four bases for spiritual power, and they have certain factors in common, factors that are common to all of them. What are those factors as expressed in the formula? The common factors? Yeah, and yeah, speaks. Yeah, two factors that are common: concentration and determined striving. Okay, now determined striving, there are some suttas in Samyutta Nikaya. There's a whole chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya on the four bases for spiritual power. And those suttas explain determined striving simply by way of the formula for the four right kinds of striving. So we see the four bases for spiritual power include within them the four kinds of right striving. And then we have common to the four kinds of bases for spiritual power, concentration, which is samadhi.